Welcome back to another day of Guided by Faith. This is Ryan, and we're continuing on in the 13th chapter of the book of Romans as we talk about authority. How God has ultimate authority, He has given authority to governments and to other authorities in our lives, and how we are to submit to those authorities unto the Lord as a sign of worship to Him and trust that He has things in order and in control. So today we're going to be talking about not just His authority, but how the role of government is used to further His kingdom each and every day. So let's just talk about the role of government as a whole. I think it can be described in 2 points. One, its role is to protect order within the borders it has to allow for harmony and prosperity of its citizens. And 2, to provide defense against threats from outside its borders. So we see it is twofold: protection and prosperity. Because if it is working perfectly, everyone within the government is succeeding and they're growing. They're not being contained or restrained. They are trying to be the best people that they can under the government that is shepherding them. And it's also that they can be protected from evildoers on the outside. In Romans chapter 13, verse 3, it says that rulers are not a terror to good conduct. If you are doing good, it's saying, if you're doing good, it's not a terror to you. You shouldn't be afraid of your government because the government is trying to provide order for your life. It says it's not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? This is a question Paul's asking. And then he answers it. Then do what is good. You wouldn't have to be afraid of a government if you are doing good, because the government's purpose is to produce good in its people. And when you do good, you will receive His approval. This is the continuing of chapter 13, verse 3. And then in verse 4, it says, for He is God's servant for your good. That the government is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for He does not bear the sword in vain. For He is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. So what the role of government is not just to protect the order within, to provide prosperity, and not just to defend against people on the outside, but maybe to do 2 things: to restrain evil and protect good. And those are things that are really close to the heart of God and why He would want the authority to be given to these authorities, these major government authorities in the world, the rulers of the nations. It's to restrain evil. Romans chapter 13 says, does the government not bear the sword in vain? Says that there is a punishment, that they are ready to enact justice on those who do wrong. It says it's an avenger who carries out God's wrath on wrongdoers. The government's there to restrain evil. And for those of us that are in the government, as long as we're not doing evil, we shouldn't be afraid of the government. This is a government that God has put into our lives. For any government that you're in, for the hope is that they are doing it unto the Lord themselves, that they are submitting to the authority of God themselves because God's given the authority to them and they are still under the authority of God. So the hope is that they are doing that. But even if they're not, God's still using them for a purpose, to restrain evil, but also to protect what is good. Because in the 3rd verse of this chapter, it says, rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. It is not that we should be afraid of a government. And we're actually going to see how to respond to governments that are doing things against God in about 2 days. But we're also just going to talk about right now, what can a government not do and why we need the ultimate authority of God in our lives. What's important to understand is that governments they can punish evil behavior, but they cannot change hearts. Governments also can make laws, but not make people righteous. Governments can restrain sin, but they can't forgive sin. Governments can protect life, but they cannot give life. Governments can create order, but not create the kingdom of God that we are to hope for as Christians. The government, in summary, can restrain the hand, but only Christ can redeem the heart. And as Christians living within a government, our role, in which we're going to explore tomorrow even in more depth, is to give God glory and use our position as Christians to work in this ordered world of government, to be able to go into the government of this world and to help restore the faith that they have in God. We are challenged to go into all the world, into all the nations. So the government's there to provide the stability of the world that we can go out. If it was just total anarchy, it would be hard to further the kingdom of God, to share the gospel freely. So we're going to continue that and learn more about that tomorrow. But you remember, God uses the order of the government to give the most people an opportunity to respond to the gospel. And that is a beautiful thing. So we're going to talk about our role within the government and under the government tomorrow. I'll see you then.